Welcome to Hugo Polizzo's The Writing Life. It's my great pleasure to have a wonderful conversation with my old friend Rita Dove, who I think needs no introduction, former Pulitzer Prize winner and poet laureate for this nation. In fact, a poet laureate who changed the job description. I think that's safe to say. It was a pretty sleepy operation, I think, before you took it over, and created really a sense of mission in that position. I don't know if you feel that way. Do you have that sense?
I do. I had the feeling that I was one of the youngest who was appointed, and I thought,
Right.
well, that means they want me to do something, and I did.
You had the energy.
I had the energy, right? I could still move.
Yeah.
No. And I really didn't have to do much. I just, people told me what to do. I got lots of letters from people, and they said, people are afraid of poetry. I'd get all these letters where people would say, I don't understand poetry, but, and then they'd tell this incredibly moving story
Right.
about a poem that
Right.
sustained them.
Right.
And I thought, no, that's what you have to do. Just get the word out. Put poetry everywhere.
I think, Robert Pinsky, when he had the position, sort of picked up the baton from you in that respect, and tried to make it with those poetry choices,
Right.
a very public kind of experience.
Yes.
And he did. I think he did.
No, I think he really did.
But that wouldn't have happened, I think, without your precedent.
Well, I do know that one of my successors, I guess people who came after me, I won't name names, said, Rita, you ruined this for us.
Well,
now we have to work.
I've heard that myself.
Hey.
And it's true, because every new laureate is asked that question. What are you going to do with the job?
What are you going to do?
In fact, your former colleague, I guess Charles Wright, has retired, so
Yes.
I guess he's your former colleague now, but still in Charlottesville. I think he had a lot of trouble with that question. He's the current poet laureate, Charles Wright.
Right.
I think he had a little trouble with that question, because I don't think he wants to do much, and probably won't. So perhaps he's setting a new precedent,
We'll see.
a return to what was before you took the position.
Well, but in his quiet way, Charles will do something,
Really?
I think.
Yeah, he's surprising, isn't he?
Yes, he is surprising that way, and that's so cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Well, I think we should start talking a little bit about your own work and this most recent book of yours, Sonata Mulattica. Could you talk about the title?
The title, I had a long discussion with my editor, Carol Smith, about that title, and luckily she said, oh, let's go for it. Because, of course, we have all of these stigmas against the word mulatto. And I wanted a title that was, first of all, musical, that sounded musical, that had an edge of foreignness to it, but not quite, but
Right.
understandable.
Right.
And it really came from the dedication that Beethoven wrote for Bridgetower, for George Bridgetower, the violinist that he composed the sonata for. And he called him his crazy mulatto. And there was playfulness and gentleness and friendliness in the way he used it. And that keyed me into thinking about, well, how was this word used? Was it a term of denigration or not? And at that time, it was not. It was simply a description. You are a mulatto.
Right.
So I wanted to restore that word as well, and that's hence the title, Sonata Mulattica.
Well, then talk about sonata. How does that story happen?
Well, the bare bones of the story of the sonata is that Beethoven met this young mixed-race violinist and was so impressed with his playing that he stopped work on the Third Symphony and began to compose the sonata for him. And they premiered it together. Beethoven was at the piano. Beethoven was going deaf, but he could watch Bridge Tower play. And so they really, I don't know, the symbiosis is just kind of wonderful to see and to hear, I mean, in the sonata. So that's the bare bones of the story. In the end, however, after the successful premiere, Bridge Tower and Beethoven got into an argument over a girl. That's all we know.
In other words, we're operating at a very elevated level.
Yes.
But finally, the plot is a soap opera.
It's a soap. Life is a soap opera.
Exactly.
In the end, it boils down to a scuffle. You know what I mean? A kind of mental scuffle. The only clue we have to that is that Bridge Tower said late in his life that he had made a saucy comment about a girl and Beethoven had taken offense and withdrew the dedication. So here we have a soap opera, but the consequences are really dire because without this dedication to, and you know, no one knows. He really dropped out of history.
Right. It's as if his identity had been taken away. Mm-hmm. That's very moving in the book. I'd like to talk a little bit, I hope this doesn't sound pedantic, but about the form of this book. It's an amazing kind of composite and mixture of multiple voices, for one thing, and the number of secondary characters is wonderfully historical and imaginative. And I think most of the book is a kind of fantasia that way. But what, I guess, an organizing principle is what I'm interested in, because it does move, it does have an overall sense of narrative, sort of from the beginning and then the middle and then the end of his life. He lived a pretty long life.
He did, almost 80 years.
And we're talking about the Regency period in England,
yes,
which is also the era of the Romantic poets, who sort of stand in the background. Beethoven is a romanticist in one sense too, stand in the background of this book, sort of silent, as if they were witnesses. But what, I guess, how did you come to a sense of what the thing would look like?
Gosh.
Or did you just work it out as you were writing it?
I actually worked it out as I was writing it because I didn't start at the beginning. I think I would have been too daunted at the beginning.
Exactly.
I started actually near the climax. I started with Beethoven, not with Bridge Tower. I started with the poem Vienna Spring, which is where Beethoven first meets Bridge Tower. And then I realized, it's odd. It's as if I could almost see it spread out around me. And so I began writing, but I did it by color. What I did was that the early poems were green.
Okay.
They were in green folders.
All right.
This is the only organizing principle I had. You know, and then the later ones were purple, predictably,
Okay.
and then Beethoven was red, and then Beethoven. So I began to amass both research and snippets of poems, and I would stick them in their colors. Okay, and gradually I realized there were 5 sections because the colors began to spread. I needed another color. So, I mean, I think that's not hocus pocus. It's simply a way of keeping the subconscious, you know, protected while I went along. But I began to write in snippets, and sometimes I would write a poem, an early poem, and sometimes I would write one in the middle, and then I'd write. So they were gathering, and then the characters began to come in and speak out too.
So the colors had an emotional, even tonal association for you.
Yes.
And at any particular time, whether it was a stanza or a whole poem, so to speak, whatever its tone and whatever its emotional coloration would go into that particular category.
It would go in that particular category, but I also had the pressure of history because obviously I could not put, you know, I could not put Beethoven in the childhood poems, you
Right,
know,
right.
but what would happen sometimes is that there would be a resonance in an early poem, and I'd say, you know, he's railing against court music early on. But how nice it would be if in the purple section, in the later section, he's also railing against court music. So
Right.
sometimes they would balance each other out like that.
Right.
And there were lots of missteps and lots of characters that didn't make it in. And after a while, I had to make a chart. And I had a map of Europe on my wall, so I could say, okay, he's over here, and this guy is now going to go to Vienna. And
Exactly.
but it was so much fun.
Exactly. Because although the title has a sonata in it, so to speak, it's really symphonic. I mean,
Yes, it is.
in a way, Beethoven himself invented the orchestra as we understand it
Right.
today. And so you're playing all these instruments, not necessarily simultaneously, but there is a sense of time suspended here. You're not just moving through time, but you're holding time. It's incredibly alive, this text is. I think that's part of my sense of it.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And I also love the fact that you describe it as being suspended in time, because people have asked me, why don't you just write a novel? I mean, come on. You know, and it's the quality, it's different. You don't escape into this period in this book. It's ever, you feel the pressure of the suspension at every point, and that's the point of lyric poetry, I think.
Right. Do you think of it as a sequence?
No.
Good, because the reason I ask that is, as you know, the dream songs, that's
yes,
a sequence.
Behrman, yes.
Lowell's sonnets, that's a sequence. And the forms are not exactly identical, but they're incredibly similar. I mean, there's a sense of a vessel being filled and refilled and refilled. But here, the forms vary so much. How did you come to that? It was just intuition for each of the poems? I'm fascinated by the fact that you were, in this time frame, let's say 3/4 of the way through the story, but then you would go back and fill in a gap in a poem at the beginning. So
How
did that work?
You know, it is the way I work, though. It's the way that I compose even a single poem. I don't work on it from beginning to end, but I
see.
do a bit here, and then I might be working on another poem here. And I can't explain why I work this way, except that it's the way I feel most comfortable. I can say that as someone who used to be a cellist, I don't play anymore, but and had a lot of experience in orchestras and also with smaller ensembles, that idea of picking something up from over here, you know, the leitmotifs and all that is something that I'm used to.
You know, that's the one thing that comes over loud and clear, that you know your music, that you know what instruments are.
Yes.
And you're very familiar that way. It's clear. I didn't know that, by the way.
Oh, you
about the
didn't?
cello. Maybe I did, but I forgot it.
Wow.
That's really interesting.
Yes. No, I grew up playing the cello from age 10, and then I played gamba, and right after I left Iowa, I took up the gamba, so early music, and I've always kept my hand in.
Really?
Yeah.
We'll get back to the music in a moment.
Okay.
What would be a good word for it? Diction? The diction is, there's a polarity of diction in it.
Yes, it's true.
Sometimes it's very rhetorical and elevated, more often colloquial, and then it's even vernacular.
Yeah.
It really, is it character-driven, those differences?
Sometimes it is. I mean, it depends on the character. There were some characters like the Prince of Wales, who has a certain mournful, whiny, eloquent quality to him. But, you know, I was looking at some of the letters in the notes that Beethoven had written, not only to Bridgetower, he did write a few, but to other people. And I was really struck by how he would go from the elevated to the vernacular really, really quickly. And it just seemed to be part of the game. And at the same time that Beethoven was writing his symphonies, there were these incredible folk theater things happening in the fairgrounds. You saw like the Punch and Judy, the equivalent of Punch, where, you know, and really, really vulgar plays, which were always, or almost always related to some elevated play. It was like Othello the Moor in Venice.
I mean, a kind of mockery.
A mockery. And so they would go up and down in diction too, and I wanted to bring that across in you know, English as well. So it's true, sometimes it's quite elevated, but you know, if it's elevated all the time, people think, oh, it's a BBC documentary, and they fall asleep, you know.
Masterpiece theater.
Yeah, right, it's like ding. And people aren't like that. People have never been like that, you know. No.
Most people have that in them.
Yeah.
These different dictions.
Yes.
But what really fascinated me was the notes section. There I hear Rita Dove.
You do. Yes, it's true.
And you get really friendly with your material, even a little saucy and sassy. It's quite, well, I could read sections of it. I'll let the reader do that. But I found that the most interesting. In fact, I found your presence as a kind of presiding spirit over the whole project most present there in those notes.
I had a lot of fun writing those notes.
Yeah, it's as if you released at that point.
Well, you know, part of it too is that I didn't want this to be plot driven.
Right.
And which is why at the very first poem I just tell you a story and say, okay, now, you know, now we got the facts out of the way. I wanted to talk about how things happen like this. It's fascinating to me that life is so gelatinous, I guess you could say.
Great.
And so I do talk back a lot, you know, in the notes, and I just why not?
I've known you a long time.
Yes.
And I was thinking about Thomas and Beulah, which is another kind of sequence poem, not exactly that, but poem book.
Yes.
In voices, but totally different as an experience from this. And I'm not even suggesting it was a template or a model for what you produced. But it struck me as interesting as to where that lies in time and the sort of arc of your career that brings you to this. How would you compare them? I mean, it is your whole lifetime as a poet in a way, up to this point.
Wow, yeah, right. Yeah, it's true. Well, I remember when I was working on Thomas and Beulah, there was a point where I thought I would alternate points of view. It is a story of a marriage, and I thought, okay, the male, the female. And it just seemed hokey, but it also, I knew I couldn't do it. I didn't have the chops.
Yeah. Well, you weren't old enough.
No, yeah, that's true. I wasn't old. Okay, I wasn't old enough to know what marriage was like. Okay, no, but it's a different kind of book. I don't even know. I don't think they're anything alike in an interesting way. And part of the reason I remember I try to do something different in every book. I try to give myself some kind of challenge. Usually it's a craft challenge, you know, but so that I don't end up imitating myself. And when I came across this story of George Bridgetower and the curiosity began to really consume me, and I realized I just had to write the book because I was just suited for it. I knew German, I knew the music, you know, all of these things. One thing I knew I didn't want it to be was another Thomas and Beulah.
Right.
Now, what does that mean, another Thomas and Beulah?
Well, the personal investment is different, I think.
It's different. And the range and the way that I look at it is different. But I can't, from my own, I can't really categorize it. I'm waiting for a critic to categorize the difference. I just don't know.
Well, one thing I think that happens in serious writers' lives, particularly poets, is as the career goes along, they just get bigger. You know what I mean? There's more soul space, whatever you want to call it.
Right, yeah.
And that expansion requires that you meet that challenge. And that usually means, for example, you look at Eliot's Prufrock poem compared to 4 quartets. That's what happens. And it happens, or Wordsworth's small lyrics at the beginning of his career, and then the prelude. There's just more life there that has to be dealt with and accommodated. And the requirement is that you be the artist and meet that challenge. I think that's part of what happened, really.
That's
This is a pretty long book for a, quote, single poem. It's over 200 pages.
That's right, it is. I hope people don't feel that as they read it.
I mean, did you have a sense of its breadth at that moment of sort of thinking about it?
From the very beginning, and that's another curious thing that usually, be it a small poem, a short poem, or a bigger piece, I kind of have a sense of how long it's going to be before I start. I may not know I don't know what's going in it, but I kind of know that it's going to be 27 lines. Not that exact, but
Sure.
But in this, I knew this is the only way to encompass this life and make it seem not a curiosity,
right?
But a kind of essence of humanity would be to bring the entire world that he lived into the book, and that meant big.
Yeah.
Well,
it resonates not just in the detail, but in a larger conceptual way. You really feel at some point in it, you're in a world.
Great.
And it's defined by these characters. But of course, it has a protagonist. And if you think of it in dramatic terms, Beethoven is the antagonist, even antagonistic, I suppose you could say. So it meets those tests as well, those aesthetic tests. I suppose in the time we have left, maybe you could read something?
I'll be pleased to.
I had something in mind. I put my glasses on page 66. There's a villanelle, I believe it is.
Page 66. Yes, my villanelle that went wild. It's a little longer than a villanelle.
Yeah, it is. It's a sort of supra villanelle.
Yes. Well, it's romantic. You see,
exactly.
It just kept going. And the story behind this was that I knew the historical facts were that Bridge Tower, as a young boy, as a 10-year-old in London, was being led by his father to go do these concerts.
Kind of a Mozart relationship with his father.
Yes, right. The father was making him, and he was and so he led him past to the theater, and on his way to the theater, he would pass this street musician, who was also black.
Right.
And had a peg leg, and I thought, there you have it again. This high and low, the little boy, and the boy was dressed up because, earlier you mentioned him being erased, and when Beethoven took away the dedication, and at the beginning of his life, he's always trying to find. There's a sense of what his identity is because people see him as exotic,
right.
And his father even dresses him in exotic clothes. So here is this is in the voice of the street musician, Black Billy Waters. Black Billy Waters at his pitch. Adelphi Theater, 1790s. All men are beggars, white or black. Some worship gold, some peddle brass. My only house is on my back. I play my fiddle, I stay on track. Give my peg leg, thank ye, sire, a jolly thwack. All men are beggars, white or black. And the plink of coin in my gunny sack is the bittersweet music in a life of lack. My only house is on my back. Was a soldier once led a failed attack in that greener country for the Union Jack. All men are beggars, white or black. Crippled as a crab, sugary as sassafras. I'm Black Billy Waters, and you can kiss my sweet ass. My only house weighs on my back. There he struts like a Turkish crackerjack. London queues for any novelty, and that's a fact. All men are beggars, white or black. And to this bright brown upstart hack among kings, one piece of advice: don't unpack. All the home you'll own is on your back. I'll dance for the price of a mean cognac, sing gay songs like a natural-born maniac. All men are beggars, white or black. So let's scrape the catgut clean, stack the chords 3 deep. See, I'm no quack, though my only house is on my back. All men are beggars, white or black.
The rhymes, the cognac rhymes are wonderful. You get a whole life into those rhymes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is the dancing a sublimation of your cello years?
Yes, my husband and I doing ballroom dancing. I mean, someone will
Well,
look back on
the
that.
book
and
before this one, in fact, is a dance, really.
It's a whole
kind of a
dance.
free verse mixture of things.
yes,
but
the American Smooth.
Yeah.
I think it's a kind of a natural culmination. I think to be involved in music, first as a musician, then as a poet, and then trying to embody that song in a way, and that to involve the body in it, truly involve the body, and it was a natural course. It was also something to do after our house burned down, and we were just kind of like hanging out. I mean,
Right.
I don't believe in coincidences actually, but it was just really kind of remarkable that after the house burned down and our neighbors took us to a dance to cheer us up, a dinner dance, and people danced by, and I said, I've always wanted to do that. And when something happens in your life, big, like that kind of tragedy, it wipes the slate clean. You suddenly feel like I should do everything.
You're starting over.
You're starting over. And so the whole neighborhood signed up for dance classes, and I said, why not? I mean, you know, let's do it again.
Rita, I want to thank you for this lively and very rich conversation. It was a lot of fun for me.
It was a lot of fun for me too, Stanley. Thank you.
And thank you for watching Hoko Polizzo's The Writing Life.